Hello and welcome back to another exciting video on Hardy's books. Today, we're going to chill out a little bit. We're going to mellow down because I know a lot of you are feeling the advance of time, are feeling the pressure. There are so many books to read and so little time to do it. And I get it, when I compare my Goodreads profile to, other people on BookTube, sometimes I can feel a little bit of imposter syndrome creeping in. There's that feeling when you look at the number of books you've read, you think, wow, those other people, they've read a lot of books, and I need to read more books to catch up. This is the thing. There are so many books to read, and it can feel impossible. It can feel like sometimes your TBR, as in your to be read list, or as I prefer to call it, your to boldly read list, is gaining in size faster than you're depleting it. And that can feel a bit overwhelming. So today, I want to give you my top 5 pieces of advice. I would say tips, but there's only about 2 actionable pieces of advice here. So let's just say 5 things to consider to help you tackle your TBR. I'm just going to put this over here because I need to use my hands to get real. I think the first one is actually the most key piece of advice. No one who matters cares about what you have and haven't read. You hear that? No one who matters cares. Maybe I should rephrase that as well a little bit. Like, anyone who cares shouldn't matter. I mean, ask yourself, why do you read? Why do you crack open a book at the end of a long day and, engage in a story, get immersed in a story? Why do you do that? At the end of the day, reading is a hobby. It's a thing that you do to pass the time, or at least I hope it is. If the only reason you're reading is to have read something, i.e. to give into that TBR, to be read kind of idea, if the only reason you're reading is to have checked something off a list, you got to ask yourself, why is it that you're doing this? Are you doing it to have kind of expanded your tastes, expanded your world? In which case, fine, totally understands. But if the only reason you're reading it is so that you won't feel embarrassed when someone goes onto your Goodreads and looks at all the books you've read, and I'm saying this to myself as much as I'm saying this to anyone else, because I definitely I hid my Goodreads profile for a while because I was concerned what people would think when they see that I have only read 2 books of Wheel of Time. If you want to read something just to feel like you're part of a club, you can let that go. Here you go. I'm taking it. It's gone. You are a reader. You're not a have-reader. If your TBR is causing you stress, this next one is for you. For most people, life is long. You don't have to have read Wheel of Time in 1 year. For me, I'm 31, I'm healthy. I've probably got at least 40 years left in me. That's a lot of time to read the classics. I don't have to do it all in 1 year. I can spread it out over the course of my life. If I have only reached, The Dragon Reborn, and then suddenly I'm hit by a car tomorrow, there's going to be no one standing around my casket going like, oh man, what a shame you didn't get to see the ending. Who cares? Next point on the list. Ask yourself, are you enjoying what you're reading? We just discussed how reading is a hobby to bring you joy, to make you feel fulfilled. If the book you're reading is not doing that for you, if you're going, you know what, I'm not really vibing with this book, I am here today to give you permission to put that book down and say, that's enough for that. There is absolutely no shame in DNFing a book, and that will free up time for you to pick a book that you are more excited about and read that instead. You don't need to waste time on books that you're not liking. Good example, this year I was reading The Terror, which had been recommended to me a number of times by Dan Simmons. Not recommended to me by Dan Simmons, the book's by Dan Simmons. Anyway, I tried to get into it. It just didn't really mesh with me. I found, some elements just a bit kind of cynical. I didn't really like any of the characters. It was a bit, felt as maybe a little bit misogynistic. I read half of it and then put it down. That was about 100,000 words maybe of book that I read and chalked it up to experience. There is a reason why the sunk cost fallacy is called a fallacy. That time that you could win back by DNFing a book sooner is useful. So put it aside, pick up something else on your TBR that you're going to really enjoy. Okay, the next piece of advice is probably the most actionable thing on this list, and is also very much common sense. These are all common sense. So if you haven't started listening to audiobooks yet, now is your time. When you look at people who read 50 books a year, 100 books a year, there is a reason why these people can read so many books a year, and it's because they aren't spending all their time with a book in front of them, turning the pages. They are most likely reading while they're doing other things. With audiobooks, that opportunity suddenly becomes available because you can do whatever task you're doing, as long as it doesn't require your ears. So maybe don't do this if you're... Bang, what requires ears? Don't do this if you are, a professional podcast editor or something. Apparently those exist. But if you're doing cooking, if you're doing cleaning, if you're working on a spreadsheet or doing some menial work task, if you're driving, although be safe, if you're commuting like on the train or on a plane, if you are living the high life, these are the perfect times for you to have your headphones on and to have an audiobook going. And that way you're going to get through so much more of your TBR every year. Now, I can already hear the argument saying, well, what if I miss something because I'm not paying full attention? My friend in Christ, this is... You can read plot summaries if you get lost. If you can't remember what happened in that chapter, or if you're getting if you need a bit of a refresher, if you've heard that character's name before, just go onto Wikipedia and, catch up on the plot summary. If you're confused, it is totally valid and it's totally okay to look at the plot. It still counts as reading. It still counts as, engaging with the story. It probably is going to make your experience of the story more enjoyable. And that's what this is all about. Another thing, if you want to get through books faster, you can speed up the narrator. Like I was listening to The Will of the Many earlier this year. Fantastic book, really recommend it. I found Ewan Morton, he's a great narrator, but he just was delivering that one a little bit slow for me. So I sped it up to 1.3 times and finished the book much faster. Didn't lose anything through having it on that fast speed. I just really enjoyed it. So point 4, listen to audiobooks. I know it's obvious, whatever, it's fine. Point 5, this might feel a bit contentious if you're one of those immaculate record keepers who wants to keep track of every single recommendation they've got, every single good book they've heard of, and all of that. But if the size of your TBR is getting overwhelming, if you go onto Goodreads and see, damn, I've got to read 100 books to catch up, if your TBR is growing faster than you can shrink it, I'm here to tell you, you can delete books off that list. You can remove books from that list if you want to. It's fine. Maybe every month or so, it's worth just going back to your TBR and going, how long ago did I put that book on that list? Was it about a year ago? Probably not going to get to it anytime soon. Probably time to remove it. If that makes your skin crawl, if you're one of those people who's desperate to keep track, then maybe you could use something like Storygraph, where you have your to read list and then you have your up next list. You can fit about 5 books on there. You're never looking at your massive to read list. You can instead just say, right, okay, these are the next 5 books. You're probably not going to need to know more than 5 books unless, you're making content about this stuff or whatever. I try not to think more than 5 books ahead, because once I finish that 5th book, I'm probably not going to be able to predict what I'm feeling at the point where I finish that 5th book. I'm not going to be able to predict what my palate asks for next. So, focus on the short-term future. If it's just looking too big, you can remove some. What this will do is it'll make everything feel less overwhelming. I quite often look at my list and go, wow, that's a lot of books that I haven't read that I need to read. This way, it'll just keep that number a little bit lower and you'll just feel a little bit more psychologically safe when you look at your TBR. Those were my 5 pieces of advice for managing your TBR. Unfortunately, Laura is in London today at work, so the end is up to me to do. So I think, like and subscribe. That's the first one. Follow us on Instagram. That's one. And TikTok. And most importantly, go and buy a book, please. Thank you. Very good.